It was a golden morning in Thebes. The Nile River shimmered like a ribbon of liquid gold as priests walked toward the imposing temple of Karnak. The air was filled with incense and sacred chants, but something else vibrated in the wind, an invisible, indomitable power. This was the domain of Ammonius, the hidden god, whose name echoed in whispers and reverence. But who was Ammonius before becoming the king of the gods? How did he rise from obscurity to dominate Egypt and be worshipped as the creator of the universe? Ammonius was a local deity with modest origins, worshipped almost exclusively in the city of Thebes during the Old Kingdom, 2686 to 2181 BCE. At that time, Egypt was a land of grand gods, such as Ra, the sun god who ruled the cosmos, Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and Isis, the goddess of motherhood and magic. However, Thebes was a smaller city, far from Egypt's main capitals like Memphis and Heliopolis. As a result, Ammonius was almost unknown outside his local sphere. His association with the wind, an invisible but powerful force, reflected his enigmatic and hidden nature. He was a silent god, present in everything yet hard to grasp, and perhaps it was this quality that would make him so fascinating in the centuries to come. Everything began to change when Egypt descended into the chaos of the First Intermediate Period, circa 2181 to 2055 BCE, an era of political fragmentation and instability. During this time, the central power of the pharaohs weakened, and the country splintered into small, independent kingdoms, each vying for control. It was in this context that Thebes began to gain prominence under the leadership of a local dynasty seeking to expand its territory and restore order to Egypt. This dynasty, known as the 11th dynasty, saw in Ammonius the perfect symbol for their cause, a protective, invisible, yet immensely powerful god who could embody Thebes' strength against its enemies. Ammonius' role in Thebes' rise was solidified when Montuhotep II, one of the most important pharaohs of the 11th dynasty, successfully reunified Egypt and established Thebes as the new capital of the kingdom. This event marked the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, 2055 to 1650 BCE, and Ammonius began to emerge as a deity of national importance. Although he was still considered a local god, his connection with the Theban pharaohs gave him newfound status. Montuhotep II and his successors began dedicating temples and monuments to Ammonius, promoting him as the protector of the throne and the force behind Egypt's rebirth after years of chaos. However, the true turning point in Ammonius' story came with the start of the New Kingdom, 1550 to 1070 BCE. During this period, Thebes became the center of Egypt's political, economic, and religious power, thanks to pharaohs like Ahmose I, the founder of the 18th dynasty. It was Ahmose who finally expelled the Hyksos, foreign invaders who had taken control of northern Egypt during the Second Intermediate Period. After his victory, Ahmose dedicated his triumph to Ammonius, declaring that the god had guided his army and ensured his success. Thus, Ammonius became not just the god of Thebes but the god of all Egypt. He was proclaimed as the source of the pharaoh's power, the one who legitimized their divine right to rule. The union of Ammonius with Ra, forming Ammonius Ra, was another critical milestone in his rise. This fusion occurred to consolidate his position as the most powerful deity in the Egyptian pantheon. By merging with Ra, Ammonius not only absorbed the attributes of one of Egypt's oldest and most revered gods, but also reinforced his image as the creator of the universe and sustainer of cosmic order, or Mot. He was now the king of the gods, a supreme force governing the sky, the earth, and the invisible worlds. This fusion symbolized the centralization of Egypt's state power under Theban leadership, with Ammonius Ra as the embodiment of this unity. During this time, the Temple of Karnak began to emerge as the main center of worship for Ammonius. Located in Thebes, the religious complex was initially modest but began to expand grandly under pharaohs such as Thutmose I, Hatshepsut, and Ramses II. With each generation, the pharaohs added new structures, obelisks, and halls to the temple, transforming it into one of the largest religious constructions of the ancient world. The temple was not just a sacred space but also a symbol of Egypt's grandeur and political power. The larger the temple, the greater Ammonius' glory and, by extension, the greater the prestige of the pharaohs who worshipped him. Thus, Ammonius transformed from an almost forgotten local deity into a central figure in the Egyptian pantheon, a symbol of unity and the power of the Egyptian state. His cult was not merely a spiritual practice but also a political tool used by the pharaohs to consolidate their power and project their authority. This connection between religion and politics would prove crucial for the destiny of Ammonius and Egypt, placing both the god and his clergy at the center of one of the most fascinating civilizations in history. With the onset of the New Kingdom, 1550 to 1070 BCE, Ammonius reached the height of his importance as the king of the gods and protector of Egypt. His connection with the pharaohs was not just symbolic but deeply political. Egyptian rulers believed that their right to the throne came directly from Ammonius' will, and therefore they dedicated vast resources to his worship. The Temple of Karnak in Thebes became the heart of this devotion, growing in scale and wealth with each passing pharaoh. However, this close alliance between spiritual power and political power began to create dangerous tensions. The clergy of Ammonius, based in Karnak, became immensely influential, controlling vast lands, incalculable wealth, and even political decisions. The peak of the clergy's power occurred during the reign of Hatshepsut, the famous female pharaoh who ruled as king of Egypt. Hatshepsut built spectacular monuments in honor of Ammonius, including her famous mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. She portrayed herself as the legitimate daughter of the god, claiming that Ammonius had appeared to her mother in human form and divinely fathered her. This narrative bolstered her legitimacy as a ruler and elevated Ammonius' status as the creator and protector of Egypt. However, the growing power of Ammonius' clergy, who controlled his image and temples, began to threaten the pharaoh's absolute supremacy. As the centuries passed, the clergy of Ammonius accumulated more wealth and influence, becoming a political force parallel to the throne itself. High-ranking priests controlled vast portions of agricultural lands, received tributes from various provinces, and organized lavish festivals in Ammonius' name, such as the famous Opet festival, which celebrated the divine union between the pharaoh and the god. The Temple of Karnak, with its awe-inspiring scale, became not only a religious center but also a symbol of the clergy's amassed power. In many respects, the priests began to rival the pharaohs in terms of prestige and authority, creating internal conflict within Egypt's political structure. The critical point of this conflict came during the reign of Amenhotep IV, later known as Akhenaten, one of the most controversial pharaohs in Egyptian history. Dissatisfied with the overwhelming power of Ammonius' clergy and inspired by a monotheistic vision, Akhenaten decided to completely break with Egypt's religious traditions. He replaced the worship of Ammonius and other gods with an exclusive cult to the sun god Aten, whom he proclaimed as the only true god. Akhenaten moved Egypt's capital to the city of Akhetaten, modern Amarna, and ordered the closure of Ammonius' temples, destroying statues and inscriptions associated with the god. It was an unprecedented rupture, and Ammonius' name was deliberately erased from monuments across the country. This attempt at religious reform plunged Egypt into one of the greatest crises in its history. The clergy of Ammonius, with centuries of influence and popular support, resisted Akhenaten's changes. Additionally, many Egyptians opposed the suppression of their religious traditions and the imposition of exclusive worship of Aten. Akhenaten increasingly isolated himself, ruling from his new capital as Egypt faced political and economic instability. During this period, the empire began losing important territories, weakening its position as a regional power. After Akhenaten's death, Egypt quickly returned to its traditional religious practices. The young pharaoh Tutankhamun, under the guidance of advisors and religious leaders, restored the worship of Ammonius and returned power to the clergy at Karnak. This restoration was a triumph for Ammonius' clergy, who regained their prominent position as the spiritual and political center of Egypt. However, the crisis left deep scars. The confrontation between the pharaoh and the clergy highlighted the dangers of concentrating so much power in a single religious institution and revealed the fragility of the relationship between monarchy and religion in Egypt. Although Ammonius' clergy regained their power, the conflict with Akhenaten served as a warning. In the following centuries, the clergy's power continued to grow, culminating in the period known as the State of Ammonius, when the priests effectively took control of Thebes while the pharaoh ruled from another capital. This political and religious division contributed to Egypt's weakening, making it vulnerable to foreign invasions and eventually leading to the decline of its greatness as a civilization. The story of the conflict between Ammonius, the clergy of Karnak, and the pharaohs demonstrates how religion can be both a source of unity and division. Ammonius, the god of the invisible wind, who began as a humble figure in Thebes, became not only a powerful deity but also the center of a power struggle that would shape Egypt's destiny forever. The restoration of Ammonius' cult after Akhenaten's death marked the beginning of a new phase of tension and triumph. The young pharaoh Tutankhamun was instrumental in reversing the radical changes made by his predecessor. Guided by powerful advisors such as the Vizier I and the General Hormheb, Tutankhamun restored Ammonius' temples, returned confiscated wealth, and reaffirmed the role of the Karnak clergy as a central force in the kingdom. This moment was celebrated throughout Egypt as the return of cosmic order, Mot, which Ammonius Ra represented. The people felt that Akhenaten's chaos had been replaced by stability. However, the restoration also marked an even greater strengthening of Ammonius' clergy, which regained not only its status but also its political influence. As Ammonius' temples in Karnak and Luxor returned to prosperity, the new kingdom moved toward its peak of power and wealth. Under rulers such as Seti I and his son, the legendary Ramses II, Egypt experienced an era of territorial expansion and monumental construction. Ramses II, known as the Great, dedicated numerous obelisks, statues, and temples to Ammonius, further solidifying his position as the supreme god of the Egyptian pantheon. The Temple of Karnak became a demonstration of Ammonius' glory and his role as the protector of Egypt and the pharaoh. During festivals like the Opet festival, Ammonius' clergy organized extravagant processions symbolizing the union between the god and the pharaoh, reinforcing the divine legitimacy of the ruler. However, beneath this appearance of glory, the balance of power between the pharaoh and Ammonius' clergy continued to deteriorate. The clergy accumulated increasing wealth and land, often amassing more resources than the pharaoh himself. The vast donations made by rulers to please Ammonius over the centuries had transformed the Temple of Karnak into a true economic empire within Egypt. Ammonius' priests controlled thousands of hectares of fertile land, herds of cattle, workers, and even trade routes. The god's spiritual power had turned into material power, which inevitably began to threaten the throne's authority. The peak of this tension was reached during the late New Kingdom when the pharaohs began losing control over Egypt's vast territory. Ammonius' clergy, viewing themselves as the guardians of divine order, started making decisions independently of the pharaoh, assuming an almost governmental role, especially in Thebes. The Temple of Karnak, with its grand walls and imposing halls, was no longer merely a center of worship. It was a visible symbol of power rivaling the throne itself. Ammonius' priests used their position as intermediaries between the pharaoh and the god to influence political and economic decisions, undermining the ruler's authority. This power struggle reached its climax with the rise of Ramses XI, the last pharaoh of the New Kingdom. During his reign, Egypt faced internal crises and external invasions. Ammonius' clergy, led by the high priest Herihor, took advantage of the pharaoh's weakness to seize control of Thebes and its surrounding regions. Herihor not only commanded Ammonius' temple but also proclaimed himself the de facto ruler of the region, taking royal titles and usurping the pharaoh's traditional powers. This division marked the beginning of Egypt's decline period, known as the Third Intermediate Period, during which the country fragmented into independent kingdoms. The climax of Ammonius' story is not just a tale of triumph but also one of inevitable consequences. The same power that elevated Ammonius to king of the gods ultimately created an irreparable division within Egypt's political and religious structure. Ammonius' clergy, initially a symbol of unity and protection, became a parallel center of power, contributing to the instability that eventually led to the New Kingdom's collapse. Karnak, with its unparalleled grandeur, remained a monument to the god who shaped not only the heavens and the earth but also the destinies of the pharaohs themselves. The story of Ammonius and his rise to the top of the Egyptian pantheon is a journey of glory and power, but also of fragility and decline. At the height of his influence, Ammonius symbolized the perfect balance between divine strength and human leadership. He was the invisible god who blew through the desert winds, but also the one who legitimized the pharaohs and upheld Mot, the cosmic and social order of Egypt. However, as Ammonius' clergy grew in power and influence, this symbiotic relationship between the throne and the temple became increasingly imbalanced, leading to conflicts that would forever shape the destiny of Egyptian civilization. With the fragmentation of central power during the Third Intermediate Period, 1070 to 664 BCE, Egypt became a divided land. While the pharaohs struggled to maintain political control, the priests of Ammonius in Thebes became de facto rulers of the southern region. They were no longer merely intermediaries between gods and men. They now commanded armies, lands, and wealth that rivaled those of the pharaoh himself. This division of power weakened Egypt's unity, making it vulnerable to foreign invasions. Although Karnak still shone as the largest religious temple in the world, its grandeur contrasted sharply with the political fragmentation plaguing the nation. Yet, even amidst decline, Ammonius' legacy remained incredibly strong. The hidden god continued to be venerated by pharaohs who sought to restore the glory of the past, such as the rulers of the 25th dynasty, also known as the Nubian pharaohs. These rulers, hailing from the south, were deeply devoted to Ammonius and believed that his divine power had chosen them to reunify Egypt. They restored temples, rebuilt monuments, and financed festivals in Ammonius' honor, attempting to revive the ancient order and splendor the god represented. Despite the challenges, faith in Ammonius was a source of hope and resilience for many. Over time, however, Egypt became integrated into the dominion of other powers, such as the Persians, Greeks, and Romans. While the cult of Ammonius gradually lost its centrality, its influence was never completely forgotten. Traces of his worship persisted in subtle ways, even as new religions and belief systems began to dominate the landscape. The Temple of Karnak, with its colossal columns and detailed inscriptions, remained an eternal monument to Ammonius' power, a symbol of the zenith of Egyptian civilization. Even in ruins, it still bears witness to the grandeur of a god who shaped not only the spirituality of a nation but also the course of its history. The story of Ammonius teaches us a powerful lesson. Even the grandest empires and gods can face rise and decline, but their legacies never entirely vanish. Ammonius, the god of the invisible wind, continues to blow through the sands of Egypt, reminding us of the complexity of the relationship between power, faith, and humanity. The Temple of Karnak, with its vastness and mystery, still echoes the chants of a time when Ammonius was the center of the universe. Today, as tourists and archaeologists walk through its ruins, it is impossible not to feel the presence of a god who, though invisible, shaped the destiny of one of history's greatest civilizations. Ammonius teaches us a profound lesson. Even the invisible can shape the world's destiny. His legacy, carved in stone and sustained by faith, has endured for thousands of years. He serves as a reminder that power, whether spiritual or political, is a transformative force that can unite and divide, create and destroy. Today, as the wind blows through the ruins of Karnak, we can almost hear Ammonius whisper, a call to remember that faith and power, when combined, are forces capable of changing the course of history.